So, um, it's been about 2 days this weekend. Um, I just got done traveling back from Lompoc where I did um, a wrestling event, my first show back for the primary school that trained me, the place where I started out. It was pretty good. Immediately following that, actually going into the next day on the travel back, I turned 28 and it's definitely been a weekend for me. I'm tired as fuck, to say the least. I've been running on pretty minimalist sleep these last couple days, kind of taking a break day today, and not really doing much. In fact, I'll probably be laying down and taking a nap by the time I finish recording this and upload it. Um, I wanted to say and put out um, just some kind of choice words on some other subjects, and I obviously can't really say everything that I want to say, um, given the circumstance of what I'm trying to do. And I know a lot of the things going on in the world. I'm still gunning to do and make happen what I've endeavored to make happen, regardless of everything. Um, I really think the obvious and evident way to change the dynamic at play in life is to be the change you want to see in the world. And to do that, you have to engage in the actions and take the movements towards living and going about making your life align with what you want to make happen. Collectively, people doing that on an individual level builds momentum to the point of inspiring others to do so and to take the same steps in their life and move them in the direction. What I have choice of words for is, I know a lot of people out there right now are just kind of irreversibly captured and captivated with the spectacle of media, as we've talked about a lot, and we all know we are. Media is oversaturated the influence of our lives and everything that we do for a prolonged period of time, and it feels for many people that life is Groundhog Day, where it's just the same routine and the same circumstances continuously happening. Um, with what I try to do and what I got going on, and when I tell people what I got going on and why I do it, and give them the whole spiel of like the story on what led me up to it and why I continue to do things like that, um, I'm often challenged by a lot of people asking me if I'm happy with what I do and if I want to make a career pursuit out of it. And the answer is 100%. Yeah, like that's what I'm endeavoring and trying to do. Otherwise, I wouldn't go through, the tremendous effort it takes to be participatory in it. I'm not concerned with the affairs of what's happening in the world 24/7, although I keep an eye and an ear open to hear the momentum of things shifting around. Um, I'm aware of the world we're living in and the state that it's in. I don't let that stop me from trying to make something of my life that I feel is worth the time and the effort and the experience of. Ask anybody pursuing anything right now in the world, and they'll probably see something, very similar to that, or it'll come down to that. You can't make the world a better and more awe-inspiring place for everybody to exist in or to do things out of the ordinary without taking the step into the unknown and taking the risk of, you know, traveling the road less traveled. In order to do that, it's a physical act. of going about and out and into the world, and at the very least trying, making an effort, doing is the next step. Um, I do have a lot of choice words that I can't express everything on. And that is predominantly because, I'm under the restrictions of what constitutes, for many people, the limits of what potentially jeopardizes you when you're trying to form a career. That being said, I'm very good at elaborating and expanding upon, words and putting things in a way where I don't necessarily tread on particular people's toes or say anything that might raise and evoke ire from whoever it might be that so, you know, jealously warrants or undertakes the fucking, you know, big headedness of feeling targeted by stating the evident and obvious, due to grandiosity. I do have some choice words and some choice things that I've been thinking about taking place in this world, and I have some things that I feel like a lot of people want to say, constantly, and a lot of people are saying. Some people have made a life um, simply stating and speaking what is evident and obvious, and that's commendable. Um, for people who feel like they're just stuck in the rat race, um, I want to warn you a viewpoint on, what the planet is moving in the direction of, and what the world is steadily moving in the, you know, turning of this new age, almost apocalyptic delusion, stirring in the minds of many people. You know, the catalysts of these events and circumstances that are transpiring and really fucking it up for everyone collectively. You have to understand that what it is a manipulation of, money and markets. It's a big magician's ball and cup trick. Money isn't even the fundamental problem of the issue. Money is this transactional conduit by which, we exchange a kind of middleman for goods and services. It becomes when one particular entity or group of entities control the flow of wealth and commerce, and therefore control basically both production itself and labor from people, and the the movement and the purchasing of product, that money becomes more a malevolent tool than anything. Our world has always been moving in the direction throughout all the conflicts and the different kind of global agendas that exist within political interests in trying to centralize currency and money into the hands and the coffers of wealthy, powerful people, so that they can achieve and strive for bringing back what essentially are a more, draconian set of methodology that has always existed on this planet. It has always been the case with people in positions of power and authority to attempt to utilize vast swaths of humanity in a very mechanized way as pawns on a chessboard, and essentially to build society and civilization, the influences behind society and civilization, into being a kind of driving mechanism towards uh, both manufacturing consent from the populace and creating a closed bubble and echo chamber of influences that reinforce that manufactured consent, and extracting their effort and their endeavor, and therefore, a good portion of their lifespan and existence, and moving it in the direction of using it and utilizing it as a tool and apparatus. This has always been done throughout human history by a multiplicity of groups. Divide and conquer has always been a strategy used by, the powerful. It has always been to sow discord and dysfunction in societies and civilizations to keep people isolated and divided, and create through that circumstance a level of control and containment within society and civilization that allows the manipulation of people and their will to be kind of transposed upon an organized, almost mechanized structure of behavioral mannerisms that are reinforced by the culture and kind of progressively pushed in a direction of always moving back in history, not necessarily back in time, but back to a time point in history where the stable frame of human existence was basically, just a mechanical function of service and servitude. The authority figures on this planet and why things do not change on this planet ever, if not, slowly and very micro minimalistically in levels of progression, always seems to regress back to what it is because the position of power and authority is only ever pursued by people with delusions of grandeur and a lust that is only slated by controlling other beings around them and using their will as an extension of theirs. That is the truth. When you put people on a pinnacle and pedestal and give them an ability to steer other people's lives, of course, that is going to come with a conduit and a direct avenue to people hungry for control and the ability to influence other people. It's just as simple as that. The thing about what is existing in this modern paradigm that is driving everything in the direction that it is, this insane dystopic world that we're living in, the modern day time period is taking a very medieval, almost feudal approach to trying to move us into a paradigm that repeats the same circumstances and living conditions that existed in prior histories based on the criterion of rules that were most effective for controlling populaces and lording over their lives and basically creating a circumstance of inescapable wealth disparity and therefore creating the perfect pocket for opportunities to indenture people into servitude, to create serfdom, to create a feudal class and caste system, to create slavery. They want to reinstitute and establish that while keeping all the modern day amenities, but they want to slowly do it in a way where wealth is centralized and used as a ball and cup trick to train and condition people while simultaneously removing the assets and the products and the resources that made your life as convenient as they are. They want to basically strip the modern way of living of all the fancy things around the architecture that keep you from seeing that what you live in is a cattle pen. I think we all feel that right now. Stripped of all the luxury and commodity, our world and our civilizations are nothing but a human cattle pen. They want to move the world into this frame of influence that quintessentially turns it into a more brutalistic and barbaric military industrial plantation. Okay? Our leaders, whoever they may be in the world, they're not the fucking good. None of them are the fucking good guys. I don't care what you believe in or who you point to as your ideal icon or whatever. In fact, if you're still sanctioning and giving your power away to any number of these authority figures that you think are not compromised by influences or can be bought and sold and told what to do by someone waving or wafting a dollar under their nose, I'm sorry, but I find you to be a fucking idiot at this point. Money is always guaranteed. The people in positions of power can be controlled, and opinions can be persuaded, and ideals and the direction of which human history goes can always be steered and goaded and manipulated to the highest bidder. It's a den of thieves, a den of vipers, a big gaggle of fucking pirates and barbarians that run your fucking world. And they want you to treat them like deified, glorified masters on a big fucking plantation. That's what all Western civilizations and societies are becoming steadily, and why they're being dissolved, and why they're going through a multitude of cascading failures in their own structures and systems and ways of life and their cultures, is because they want them dissolved for the case in point of creating something more akin to or similar to, a state, um, well, I would say a vassal state. I don't know if that's the right terminology to define it as, but that's basically what they're aiming and gunning for. None of these people can be trusted. They're all wolves in sheep's clothing. Anytime you put someone on a pedestal, it doesn't matter whether they are good or just in that time, somebody can always move in the direction of basically usurping that, and therefore that title can always be used as a claim to power, a rise to power. And so has it always been on this planet. There's not going to be a game that changes. So long as people continuously and constantly move in the direction of trying to build an empire out of the world and treat the land as something as, a commodified resource that they own claim to. The very soil and the earth itself that not only created me and you, but created them and creates and pumps and churns out the very potential that biological life is permitted to exist in this universe, in this solar system, in this galaxy, however big or small you want to see this picture on this planet, on this little blue rock. Not only is it fundamentally absurd, but it's what has shaped the entire human condition for generations upon generations. And that idea is so ingrained in our minds that this is just the way it is on this planet. We've never been able to actively see anything but the circumstance of the very fabric of the reality we've been born into. And therefore, we never look to find a better way of living on this planet. They say the circumstance can't be changed, but how much inspiration is drawn into media and all the kind of different realms and territories of fiction and the endeavors where we see humanity has produced these ideas that have the capacity to make, a better exemplification of a way of life on this planet for everyone unilaterally. And these power structures and dynamics and the constant continuous flux of influences on this planet that drive things into cataclysm and chaos and terror and conflict all the time do everything in their power to fucking stop that from happening. It is a constant stranglehold on the very semblance of life itself to constrain it and confine it to a condition and circumstance that only makes one thing out of human beings. A species that has so much dynamic potential in it to create completely different modalities of life and living. Just in their raw potential alone, what one individual can do and prove a human being is capable of, you do not think that all human beings on this planet hold some similar semblance, whether great or small, of the same potential, whether it be in a macrocosmic sense or a microcosmic sense? It could be something as fundamentally big as, a movement of agricultural revolution where people go and plant trees and crops on every fucking corner of, the outskirts of a city. Or it can be something as small as people getting together and teaching people, an old age art form or trade like sewing and stitching clothing. These potentials are in every human civilization. These potentials are existing well into the modern day and age and have been preserved. Why is there such an inclination to abandon them at this time? Well, part of the reason is because there has been this fucking hypnotic influence of media that has constantly steered people's attention in the direction of thinking the planet is continuously and constantly on fucking fire. So people see no reason and rationale as to why to contribute anything to attempting to make the world a better place, because it continuously is made out to seem as though the world itself is just fucking falling directly into a black hole. In a lot of aspects, yeah, the world has fucked up shit going on constantly in it 24/7. That's the reality of the world. That's the reality of the brutality that exists within nature at times, and that we are susceptible to that as human beings. We're not disconnected from nature or separate from nature in the way that we think we are. And that being said, we can overcome a lot of the obstacles of what presents us with a more, almost Promethean lens and perspective of looking at the planet that turns it into such a dark, abyssal circumstance and an abysmal experience to walk through. But how are people to endeavor and strive for anything if there is an apparatus and a system that continuously basically accelerates the expenditure of people's time to be wasted by such a digitally and algorithmically calculated degree, both in the values of monetary incentives and labor, and your free time basically always being continuously funneled and pipeline towards your attention being directed at the worst case circumstances happening in the world. You cannot buy time back, and that is all that the powerful are doing in this modern day and age, is buying your time with the same ball and cup trick that is played throughout history. It is no different than the digital domain of our current time period and paradigm. The influence of technology and media is the same game that money is. In fact, it's completely embedded in that. And it doubles down further on creating a secondary control mechanism in the world by introducing what is equivalent to this little surveillance apparatus that we carry around on us 24/7. It's a fucking collar and chain, and you're not even realizing that you carry it around, basically consenting to it. Our leaders, the people in positions of power, the people manufacturing this paradigm of influences in the world, in truth, they're paper tigers. The only thing that they have to control people with is quintessentially a fragmented schism, two-tier law system that blackmails and robs opportunities of people. Money and the influence of media and the state apparatus by which, the narrative of life is manipulated. And the story we get told of life is manipulated through. Everything is meant to transpose this ideal of a dark, dismal fucking world on the planet to keep it perpetually locked in a kind of old draconian methodology of thinking, to pull us back to an influence that is just this very barbaric, brutalistic interpretation of the world as a continuous, perpetual dark age. And this is all in the perspective of manipulating selective thinking to get you to hyperfixate and focus on the grimmer details of life, rather than looking at the more positive influences or the circumstances you can build and make for yourself, and the things that challenge that, the things that challenge and break you out of the prison of your own making, the prison of your mind, the influences that bar and barricade and subjugate your autonomy from keeping you from building your own perspectives on life, from building your own perspectives around meaning, from building your own perspectives around a total and absolute truth and the freedom that comes with a total and absolute truth. To know continuously that the only thing ever going on this planet circumstantially in reality is one passing present moment, and it's a big theatrical play playing out in the world, designed by this draconian influence that has sold its soul to entropic ideological thinking and a complete abandonment of any moral perspective whatsoever for this bought and sold kind of scientific, materialistic, Darwinistic lens of looking at the world. One that is devoid of any principle, one that's devoid of any real extrapolation and interpretation of the deeper aspects of the world. Why is it this dark influence that has made the world it is? Why is it so juxtaposed to what every great pondering and thinking mind has said. Albert Einstein said, the more I look at science, the more I begin to believe that the world is intelligently designed by some higher force, by a god. Why has there been an abandonment to that? Well, science is an industry and a business no different than any other on the world. And it's rooted fundamentally at taking a materialistic, skin deep, surface level look at everything, even breaking down the most microscopic details to the subatomic particles that exist and only seeing it for a surface value, not seeing the repetition of patterns in nature that create and substantially mirror and reflect back. There is a force that intelligently designs things to repeat a certain process. And that design is more intricate and complex than what we can fucking fathom and comprehend through our thinking alone, because our thinking and the human mind is a monkey brain. It is a storytelling apparatus. It literally projects, like a movie projector, our interpretation of reality onto the external world through a mix of memory and imagination. But it is the quality of mind and consciousness that is created and been created through nature that even allows this to happen in the first place, that is in fact the miracle of life and the miracle of existence, not just for this species but every species that exists on the planet. Human beings and the human lens and perspective, and how we communicate through all the ways that we do, through this kind of epigenetic coding of mimetic language, imagery, symbolism, movement, language itself, sound, visuals, touch. That is miraculous. To be able to experience all these different senses and the gates of the senses and the way that we communicate ideas through the species and the being that we are is miraculous. To say it is anything but is to look at the world through a very fucking animalistic lens and a very lowbrow lens, and you see the world that we're living in devoid of morals and just how lowbrow it is. It's just a fucking dirty, seedy, despotic way of looking at the world that treats the world like a fucking disgusting, dirty caravan of human flesh that treats us either like tools or concubines. The lens and perspective manipulating the very fucking way that the world is being interpreted to be what it is an entropic fucking worshipping of death and the human ego projected onto an idea of God. And it's not even the God spoken of in a lot of these different languages, this all-powerful, all-infinite being of all potentials, this omniscience, this presence in things, that is the idol that is being worshipped in the modern day and age. It's influencing all this self-righteous, grandiose crusading happening in the world yet again. It's an idolization of the materialistic world and building idols, be they temples, be they fucking authority figures, be they influences of countries, what have you, armies, nations. Are these not all just physical incarnations of the same concept and notion of physical idols, where an idea and a thought is being projected upon them? And what do those ideals and thoughts demonstrate? Nothing in line and in tow with the higher aspects and perspectives of what humanity has always strived to rise out of and overcome and see through that veil, to peer through that veil, that everything is predominantly in a neutral state and the world is predominantly a peaceful thing. And there's a level degree and playing field taking place in nature where, even though it can be brutal and savage at the same time, it itself is pretty much an open plane of growth and adaptation to circumstance. There are two perspectives and this dualistic lens being imposed upon you by the nature of how this world operates through the human psyche. One is the perspective you gain and garner by taking a closer look and coming to your own conclusions and seeing through what is being said to you. The other perspective is the one spoon-fed to you through other people's opinions and ideas and doubly reinforced by a brutalistic culture basically fucking drilled into the species' subconscious psyche through traumatic fucking control, traumatic degrees of reinforcement through threat of force. and continuous fear mongering. Fear always fucking loses in that dynamic.